I'll tell you about myself. Sean, I'll tell you my story. So right now I am the legal and compliance director for contact center compliance. I know that everyone on this call is familiar with this company. I just started with them at the beginning of December last year. I am happy about my journey with them. I'm excited about the things that we are going to do together. I've known about this company for years, my entire career. They've always had such great products. They've always been an advocate for our industry. And just to be working with Isaac and Ron right now, I'm just living the dream. So I'm happy to be with them. To name a couple of the things that I'm focused on right now in my role, I review, negotiate, and manage all the contracts for the company. I do legislative tracking, keeping us up on, federal rule changes, state rule changes. So I'm doing a big part of that work that I love to do. You'll begin to see content that I'm gonna be writing and putting on the website. I'll be talking about regulations, what we could do, um, to make ourselves better, where you can go for help. So I'll be writing content and you can look for that. Um, and I'll be on our webinars and at our conferences, just being an advocate for what we do. I mean, I've just been in this industry so long and there's so much wrongdoing going on out there that I'm just happy to tout that not everyone is doing things that are wrong, that we have a lot of people that are doing things right. We need this industry and we are striving and thriving in this industry. So that's just a couple of things that I'm doing right now with the company. I do want to just talk about contact center compliance for a minute. Because I do take pride in all the companies that I work for. And I'm very strategic about who I work for. So right now, we've been in business for 20 years. Like I said, I've known this company. I felt like I got to grow up and come to work for a company that I've admired all this time. So, we have cloud-based products. My favorite is the compliance guide. I talked about I'll be doing legislative tracking so that I can keep that compliance guide up to date with federal and state regulations. This is my favorite tool because back in the day, I used to manage this manually when I managed call centers. So I used to have a electronic folder for each state. I used to have to keep up with all their different rules, but right now this compliance guide, it just has everything in one place. Um, and it's on an app. It's blowing my mind. If you need to understand what are the, you know, verbal disclosure requirements for each state, the tool has it. I remember manually writing scripts based on what each state wanted you to say at the onset of the call and working with IT and finding a way to build that in automatically. So, I mean, this this is just my favorite tool. So I'm just going to be having so much fun keeping it up to date and tracking all the legislation. Another tool we have is the TCPA Authority. This is the one that works like the reassigned numbers database. We tried to avoid this database for years, but there's no way around it now. We have to check for wrong numbers, so we have a version of that. And then the litigator scrub. I mean, I've never seen so many professional plaintiffs in my entire career. And so having a tool where you can find out who they are and get them out of your calling files is great. And then, you all are probably familiar that I worked for Convoso and, they're a dialer software, so I'm very familiar with how hard it is to get your calls through. And so we have a trusted caller ID, and it will detect if your calls are being mislabeled and not arriving to your consumer. And we can actually work with the carriers to clean that up and make sure that your phone numbers and your calls are not getting tagged as spam and improperly mislabeled, which I'm surprised that we have to have a tool like that, but we do, because there's people that are out there spamming and spoofing our calls. Um, and then everyone needs the federal and state do not call list scrub. So we have that as well. All the tools that I love playing with. So just wanted to give you that little background. I hope you don't mind if I just kind of tell you where I came from. So I am the fifth child of my mother and father, and both of my parents only went to about the sixth grade. And my mother was a homemaker the entire time, and my father was a professional horse trainer. So while he was not educated in the traditional school system, he didn't get his full education through this institution. He learned a skill of horse training, and he was a genius at it. And so, back in those days, having a craft and having your own business was unheard of. He was self-employed as a professional horse trainer my entire life. And so we had the opportunity to work for him. I grew up working for my father. I would go to work for him on the weekends, school, summer breaks. And I eventually went to work for him right out of high school. I did not go to college at the time. I went to work for my father. And, I was raised with horses all my life, that I too became a professional horse trainer. So when you have a business back in those times, that's all you had. Having a business in today's world, if you fold, you fold. You can go do something else. You can open up another one. We're all educated. But back then, my father was not educated, and the business could not fold because that was our livelihood. And that's all we had. And the family knew that. And so when I would go to work there, when my brothers would go to work there, I learned so much from that experience that it's shaped who I am today. And it's actually the foundation of my compliance career. So when you have a business and it's your livelihood and it's all you have, there was no plan B for my father. There was, oh, I'll just go get another job. No, this is all that he knew to do. So we made it work. So from that, I learned to exercise discipline. When we went to work for my father, you did not play around. You were self-motivated. You went to work, you knew what had to be done. We had customers coming in, and we're giving riding lessons, and we're training horses, and we're taking horses to competition, and we did not mess around. And so I developed self-discipline, and I'm self-motivated. We had to behave ethically at all times. We were always fair. We always treated all of our customers with the utmost respect, and we just stayed out of trouble, even as kids. We learned to establish boundaries. I was a teenager doing the books, setting rules, setting our hours of operation, and uh, setting the boundaries for how long we were going to work, where we were going to give and take with our customers, how far were we willing to go to keep them, when were we going to draw the line. So just establishing a set of rules that we would all live by. Um, and we owned our work. You know, when you're dealing with animals and customers, and you have to be very careful, you could get hurt. Um, I mean, I know someone who got his eye kicked out by a horse, lost an eye, you know, so you owned your work. There were no shortcuts. We had pride in the work that we did, and we always did our best. Our father did not have to look over our shoulder. We gave him the confidence that we were doing what we were supposed to do because we all need this business to work. This is how we live. This is all the money that we have. And then we learned to operate above reproach because we could not afford to get shut down. We could not afford to have any violations. You know, when you're dealing with animals, you have to register their pedigree. You have to make sure they're seeing the vet. The vet is coming out and they have the proper shots. There's a lot that goes along with working with animals and in the regulations that govern that industry. So, so this is who I am, and this is still who I am as a compliance professional. I just honestly believe in being above reproach. You know, I I flourish in rules, I flourish in boundaries. And so these experiences have just truly laid the foundation for my career. So so how did I get into compliance after that? Like I said, I did not go to high did not go to college right out of high school. I went to work for my father and I made that my livelihood for a number of years. But eventually I decided I do want to go to college. And so I left that industry. I went to college and I started with an associate's degree in paralegal studies. I thought I love this. And so while I was earning that degree, I worked for a small law office for two attorneys. One was a criminal defense attorney, one was practice family law. And so once I got that degree and got that experience in, I moved on to earning my bachelor's, and then I left the law office and went to work for InfoCision. Many of you are probably familiar with InfoCision. Excuse me. It's a telemarketing company based in Akron. When I worked for them, they had anywhere between 30 to 35 brick and mortar call centers all throughout Ohio and a couple in West Virginia. And so I was there for 10 years. I worked my way through the ranks there, and I managed compliance for all of the call centers. Everything went through me um, for all the call centers. Um, and that's where I became rooted in telemarketing regulations. There was so much to learn. There were, there was so much to do. So many questions from account executives, so many questions from the sales team. And so I just really had to understand the rules, and I would just spend hours in the regulations understanding them. And um, so I finished my bachelor's degree and my master's while at InfoCision. Um, and I love compliance so much that my master's is actually in business ethics and compliance because I knew where I wanted to go. I know what I want to do, and I'm fortunate enough to be working in a field that I studied. Um, so after InfoCision, I thought I'm going to leave this industry for a bit. I want to learn compliance. There's other areas of compliance. There's so many areas of compliance that I went to Bridgestone Americas. Um, it's the tire and rubber company. They actually own their own bank. When you go into their stores, they offer you a credit card. Well, they don't finance that out. They actually own their own limited purpose credit card bank. And so I became a compliance bank auditor and would audit their bank on a rotation, myself in a team. And so I learned the banking regulations. There were at least 18 to 20 different banking regulations that we would audit the bank on throughout the year on a rotation. They were headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. So I reported to the legal field of Bridgestone, their legal department. So that was a wonderful experience. I learned how to be an auditor during that time. And then I went to a background screening company. One of the biggest in the world, Sterling Infosystem. They were always acquiring another company. So I learned how to do background screening in terms of compliance. They're heavy on state laws, excuse me, and consumer reporting. So I love the different areas of compliance, and I love learning about the different areas because it's so broad. Um, but then I returned to this industry and I found my Convulso family. So they needed a compliance officer, they needed a compliance department. Um, and I decided that I would work for them, and I built their department over the 3 years that I was there. Um, and most of you, I'm sure you're familiar with Convulso as well. Software, dialer, technology. Um, and now I'm with contact center compliance. And it's a beautiful journey that I'm on. It's a beautiful journey. So that's how I got into compliance. Um, so I want to talk about what is compliance. I know you all know what is compliance, but I would like to share what is compliance from my perspective, from someone who's been in it for a very long time, what it means to me, what I've learned over the years. I just want to share that with all of you. So when I first got into this, and I would say what I do, people didn't understand what regulatory compliance is. Um, it it was rarely talked about back in the day. Now companies are obsessing over it. Now it's even a buzzword. We're marketing it. People are aware of compliance now, which I'm happy about because it's been necessary for years. But it was hard to explain uh, back in the day because no one knew what I was talking about. So, as I described in the different roles that I've had, all industries have a regulatory body that is going to govern them. No matter where you work, there's going to be a set of laws that you have to follow. And so that's a good way to explain it. Um, so in my compliance role, and what I wanted to share was, you have to, if you're going to be a compliance professional, you have to understand, what is your company's business objectives? What are their goals? You have to go out and examine the regulations and advise on how to comply with that. If you don't get that on straight, it's going to be a battle. So the number one thing is, coming in as a compliance officer is just understanding, what is your company doing? Where do they want to go? And you have to go and find the regulations that are going to help them be successful. You find the ones that are going to not allow them to do that. And you have to advise properly on how to get to where the company wants to go. You Compliance is serving as a liaison between the business and legal counsel. Excuse me. And I like to give an example of this. I gave an example of this at Link Unite last year, but when marketing and sales, um, when they have an idea and they want to launch a new product, product development, they want to do something new, they want to market it. If that team goes directly to your legal counsel, that idea is going to be perfect. There's not going to be anything wrong with it. it's going to be compliant through and through. It's going to be the best thing ever. There's not going to be anything to watch for. So marketing, sales, product development, if they go straight to your legal counsel to get advice about this, it's going to be the perfect idea. As a compliance professional, that idea needs to come to me first. It needs to come to the compliance first, so that compliance can really paint the right picture for that. Can really understand, okay, this is what you want to do. There's regulations that will allow us to do this much of it. Or there's regulations that will allow us to not do this much of it. Why don't we try this? It could work. And so compliance needs to work with those teams first, and then compliance can take that proposal to your legal counsel and queue it up properly. Conduct the research behind what's being proposed, do all the legwork. It cuts down on fees as well. If compliance can do a lot of the work, put the proposal together, hand it off to legal counsel. They can see your research that's been done. They can see what you think will work, what you think won't work. And that's a true liaison between the business and your legal counsel, is to bring both those parties together with a true understanding of what the ask is. Compliance is performing legal research and writing. It's, like I said earlier, conducting legislative tracking and interpreting the law. You may do board of director reporting, depending on which company you work for, what your role is. You may be the one that reports to the board of directors, which I've done that in the past, and give an update on the condition of the company in terms of compliance. You may write policies and procedures. You may formulate an audit committee, be part of an audit committee, conduct risk assessments on the company to measure their strength in terms of complying with regulations. And you may even be in charge of business ethics, training on it, bringing your company up to speed to being ethical, continuing to be ethical, and putting training developments together. You may be the one to develop the code of conduct and train on that. There's so many layers to what compliance is. I've conducted internal investigations. You get a cease and desist letter from the FCC. You have to conduct investigations on behalf of your company. There's corporate governance you may be in charge of. What set of rules are you going to abide by? How is all that structured within your company? Which departments have responsibility for which particular set of rules? Excuse me. And then you may also be charged with, what is the duty to society? What is your corporate social responsibility? What has your company determined that is your CSR? An example of that are, the automotive industry. They vow to be emissions free in 5 years, 10 years. That's their corporate social responsibility. So there's, again, just layers to compliance. That's what it is to me. And then why is it important? Why is compliance important? So there's safety, there's confidence, there's comfort when you live in the confines of compliance. Compliance to me is not scary, it's not restrictive. Just like when I worked for my father, I thrived in the confines of compliance, of being above reproach, of doing things right. There's a security and there's a safety and there's a confidence that comes with operating that way. When industries get flooded with, fraudulent activities, and consumers begin to look for companies that are going to offer them safety, that's going to tell them the truth, that understand regulations and understand how to comply. So this is just another reason why it's important. You could be that company. Um, your company could become an example of, you know, just compliance and thriving in a world where there are bad actors, but there is a rescue. You can be rescued from that. There is a place to go for that. Not everyone is a bad actor. Um, and also it's important if you put controls in place to protect your company. Those could be manual checks and balance by human beings. They could be automated systems put in place so that even when you aren't watching, you're not unknowingly falling outside of compliance by the things that are going on that you don't constantly have your eye on. You could set up alerts, things like that. Um, and you could self-regulate too. It's important. Self-regulation is important, shows regulators that you care and that you're proactive. If the FCC comes for you, the first thing they're going to ask you is, let me see your policies and procedures. And they're going to want to know, what do you have in place? What controls do you have in place? Do you subscribe to the National D&C Registry? Do you understand the regulations? What are you doing? What do you have in place? And most times, if you can show that you have everything set up and everything in place, that's your best start. When I worked for, excuse me, for Bridgestone, so we audited the bank on a regular basis, but to self-regulate, we would hire an outside auditor to come in and conduct one of the same audits that we did on the bank, see if we got it right. And then we would ask them to now look at our audit and audit our audit to see if we got it right, because that's how much care we wanted to put into being compliant. So that's self-regulation. And then just know your customers. This is big in all of our industry right now, is to know your customers. It's important because your compliance team can vet your clients, you know, can go out and take a look to see if they're actually a business, how long they've been in business. Um, I took a lot from the background screening company that I worked for. There's key pieces of information that you could put together to prove that someone is who they are and a company is who they say they are. Um, and so I will wrap this up with challenges. What are some of the challenges with being in the compliance industry? Challenges that I've managed to overcome and that I've learned along the way. And I talked about this earlier. So if you're not aligned with company goals, it's going to be a challenge because you're just going to, not be in agreement the whole time. So it's best to align, understand the company's goals, and that's what you're working towards. If you haven't developed trust and confidence in your company, it's going to be a battle. You have to be a trusted advisor. You want the company to come to you and trust that you've done your research, that you have the good advice, that you know what the ask is. Otherwise, your company will go straight past you, straight to legal counsel, who won't have the whole story if that person isn't in-house and understand the regulations that you're in charge of. Unable to demonstrate that you understand the ask. Again, I've learned this early on in my career. These are the things that you have to get on straight so that it goes well. Just understanding the ask, standing firm in your findings, but also leave room for, I could possibly be wrong, you know. Be confident in your legal research when you take that back to the team and you tell them what your findings are, but just leave a little bit of room for, this is my best research here, but I'm willing to go and take this to legal counsel to see if I missed anything. It's possible that I may have. I mean, the moment you start thinking, I know it all, I've got it figured out, that's not a good way to go. And compliance can be an us versus them dynamic if you're not careful. Compliance tends to tell the company no to things. And so marketing doesn't want to hear no, sales doesn't want to hear no, product doesn't want to hear no. And so you can develop this us versus them mentality, and it doesn't have to be that way. You can work as a team, build that confidence, let your team know that you understand the ask and that we're working together and it will go well. So I hope that this is helpful. I hope that you learned a little bit about me. And I hope that you're encouraged and that you come to love compliance the way that I do. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I had a question, Tammy.
Okay. Hi,
Thank you so
Kelly.
much. Hi. Thank you for
You're welcome.
sharing. I'm
You're
glad you
welcome.
found your home in compliance. I'm very fascinated. But I can imagine how much easier it is when you know what rules you're working, within and parameters. It does make a lot of things smoother. And I know as performance marketers, we can identify with that. The better understanding they have of their audience, the better we can go in and be very precise about things. So definitely understand, but definitely have some headbutting a lot of times with legal and compliance in the marketing space.
Yeah.
But wanted to ask you specifically about technologies, this AI thing, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like the wild, wild west. How do you prepare yourself from a compliance standpoint to kind of wrap your arms around something so innovative, so unregulated, if you will? No one really knows where it starts and definitely not where it ends. So, kind of, what are your feelings, sentiments? What are you anticipating in your field with regards to technologies and more specifically AI?
Yeah, I want it to thrive. Um, I mean, companies just have to learn AI governance.
Mm-hmm.
We understand how it's developed. We understand machine learning. And it depends on how you're using it at your company. If you are the developer of an AI product and you're feeding it so that it can learn, you want to be careful that the data that you're putting into it isn't data that you did not obtain consent to use.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're using customer information to feed your machine learning, did you get consent for that? Or are you using anonymized data for your machine learning? We just need to learn AI governance. We need to make sure that the output isn't biased, you know,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But I want it to thrive in
So
terms
you all
of,
get into like the source of the data being used and like that in depth. I guess I'm understanding, where would compliance start and end, or at least start, especially with data being the main driver of kind of the innovation, and a lot of the sourcing of it is just in a black box somewhere, or is second
yeah.
hand, third hand, fourth hand, we don't know.
Yeah, I think the place to start is, can you give me an example of how you're using AI?
Yeah, once upon a time, a third
Okay.
party came on the scene. I worked at a Omnicom agency, so lots of advanced third party data, clean room data. I mean, we were just starting to go down the funnel of data more so than the media and the marketing of it all, because again, I think there was an ethical question, certainly legal questions. But once we figured out, we have all these tools and all of these third party data sets available. My question was, as a lead, where is this data coming from? I mean, it's really nice to have it available. I love how it's packaged, it's very thorough. And we have, again, all of these cutting edge tools, but I am not able to say where it came from. So I can only imagine if
Yeah.
legal knew about this, especially large agency, right? Like, they don't really know all the intricacies of each function within, a said agency. So a flag for me, just as a performance marketer, was when we started getting access to what I would say is, yes, very great um, data for performance marketing tactics and conversions, and but the question was, where in the heck did these people get this data from? It feels very invasive. It feels like,
Yeah.
how is this being collected? And then the question was, well, should I be concerned about that? I mean, it's not my job, really. It's my job to get certain results and maybe teach best practice, but with the tools that we have, this is kind of it. So I'm wondering, it was a lot of questions around when to flag, how much I should care. Does legal and compliance know about, certain tactics and the data aspect of it? And just
Yeah.
how big of a deal do we want to make any transfer or usage of data when it's just so
Yeah.
intricate to so many clients and so many functions?
Yeah. I love that you're questioning it because compliance should be practiced by everyone. Like, I rely on someone in your role to, you're working with something and it doesn't feel right. And I
Mhm.
expect you to speak up. Like, I want you to speak up. Compliance, I teach that, I train that, and let the company know that it's not just me. If you see something, say something. And so this is good that you're actually looking at, where does this data come from? And you should be concerned about that because we know that data is gold, but data should have consent. I wouldn't touch data unless I know where it comes from. And then, where's the agreement on this data? Who owns this data? Where's the consent? Like, you do need to know those things. So don't stop your thought process when you start to think about that. Continue to wonder, keep going, and find out.
Most definitely. Thanks, Tammy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question.
Okay.
It's
Yes,
a little bit
Nandala.
it's a little bit more personal, but I'm gonna ask you
Okay.
anyway. And if you're like, I'm not gonna answer that on this call, then that's fine. But
Okay.
I was thinking about all of the regulatory things that you've done, not just now in your current profession, but also from when you were younger. And I have so many questions about the horses and raising horses. I love horseback riding. That's one of my favorite things. But I really want to ask you about you. So as you have grown up in this regulations and rules and compliance, how does that affect your personal life? I mean, we see that it brought you into your professional space, but in your personal life, do you find that you have these rules and regulations for yourself as well? How does that work?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, yes. So I have been married for 30 years. I have 3 adult children. I have a small grandchild. Okay. And so my kids know mom, when mom says something, she means it. I have never screamed at my children. I've never yelled at them. I don't need to. They know I mean what I say, and I love them, and there's nothing they could do ever to make me stop feeling that way with them. And so, we've had rules in our household. Everyone, just like my father raised me when I went to work for him, no one looked over my shoulder. I knew what I had to do, and I raised my kids with that same attitude. This is your role in the house. These are your chores. You're responsible for this. We're a team, and so I live by that as well. So does it affect me? Yeah, I'm that way all the way around, all the way around. I have rules in my house. My kids know it. My husband loves. We parent the same way. We have parented the same way. Um, we've never argued in front of them. We would go into another room and we would, okay, what are we gonna do? And then we'd come back and we would give our verdict. You know what I mean? So I didn't know if that's what you,
No,
that's what
I'm
you,
sorry. I couldn't bite my tongue anymore. I just want to make sure I understand. So you've been married for 30 years. I've been married for 30 years as well. You said your husband loves your rules. Did you say that or did I just hear it wrong? You said your husband loves your rules?
yes, and we agree on them. We agree
Okay.
on them. You know, yeah, he's like, that's a great idea, you know, what you
Sean,
decided to do with the kids, you know, that's a great idea.
Sean, you know the rules. Happy wife, happy life. It is tried and true. And Tammy, I'm sure, is like, no, I need to lay down that groundwork. So
Hey, it's Women's Month. You know what? I'm gonna take a step back. I'm taking a step back.
You're not
Hey,
gonna win this one, Sean.
I like his rules too. He has rules too. That we agree on each other's rules. Okay?
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. So,
Yeah.
and so you had this,
Yeah.
so he knew who you were. You're like, you knew who I was when you married me. So, no, I get
Yeah.
that. No, that's really, really good. I think that's wonderful. And who knows, like you should write a book about, parenting and the rules and regulations that you should have that you set up at the very beginning so that, things can go smoothly. I love that.
You know,
Oh,
you know what?
thank you.
Hi, this is Juanita. I always say happy spouse, happy house.
That's what I say. Everybody needs to be happy. It can't just be the wife's happy and the husband's not happy. Everybody needs to be
Exactly.
happy. Okay. So no, thank you so much for sharing that, for sharing some of your history, your origin story, as well as what it is you're doing. I would love to ask you, one of the things I'm curious about as somebody who kind of slid in the back door of performance marketing, which is funny because when I say that to people, there are a lot of people that tell me they did the same thing. And of course, now they're gurus in the space. Definitely not me. But I am curious as to what is the most frequent question that you get from people when it comes to, compliance and regulation? What is that frequent question? You find yourself answering it over and over and over again. Maybe you could just share that.
Still, what is compliance?
Hmm.
Like still, what do you do? You know, oh, you're with contact center compliance now. What do you do? It's a compliance company, you know? Like
Got it.
still putting the pieces together. We know TCPA exists. We know there's a telemarketing sales rule, but still, what are you doing about that? What are you looking into your own company? Are you looking outwards? Well, it will depend. You know, I've got my eye on everything.
Yeah.
You know, I've got my eye on what our clients are doing. I've got my eye on what we're doing. You know, I'm sure that, you know, Ron and Isaac want me to keep my eyes open. And if I see something, oh, we need to correct this, or we need to be watchful of what's going on over here. So it depends on what's going on, just being watchful, knowing about everything that's going on that's in your control. But I still get that same question.
Okay.
What do you do?
What do you do? Yeah.
I could
Okay.
so see that, Tammy. I'm just thinking through because in the medical world, compliance is so prevalent. So they're all aware because of HIPAA and the
Yeah,
regulations that HIPAA puts on the industry. But from
yeah,
other industries, to your point, it's not a known thing. So I could see how you are constantly bringing awareness and having to educate and nurture people and companies in this. So they're fortunate to have someone like you though, who is able to do that because I think that's part of the challenge is a lot of people don't even have a foundational element of nurturing or education to teach this. And you have a gift because you basically broke it down in a way in this session that brought so much clarity to even me. So, thank you for that.
thank you. Thank you. You're welcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We love it. Thank you so much for that. Does anybody else have any other quick questions? We're almost at it, but anybody else? I don't want to.
I just wanna thank Tammy for sharing the story.
I mean, I think we all end up getting to see each other at shows, and it's always this, small talk, and we move on. And this is a great time for us to really get to know you and, know your background and know what drives you. So, I really want to say thank you for sharing.